Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload. The first time I noticed the card, it was almost by accident. We were unpacking after her conference trip, one of those corporate gatherings that promised networking opportunities and endless panels about leadership. She dropped her purse on the couch, rummaged for lip balm, and the small rectangle slid halfway out of an inner pocket. A hotel key card. The logo was printed in silver with the room number scribbled faintly in marker, 1217. She froze for half a second, then plucked it out with a laugh too light to be natural. "Oh, that, business perks, they always give us spares," she said, tossing it casually onto the coffee table as if it were nothing more than a receipt. I smiled, nodded, and said nothing. But that night, when she slept, I sat in the dark living room staring at the card. Numbers don't lie. 1217 was not just a spare. It was a location, an open door, proof of something she thought I'd never question. The conference had been across town, a hotel barely 30 minutes from our home. Why would anyone need a spare room when they lived close enough to commute? My chest burned with questions, but I kept them inside, sealing them up tight like nails in a crate. The next morning she was up early, chirping about a new project at work. She kissed me on the cheek, grabbed her laptop bag, and left in a whirl of perfume. I stayed behind, staring at that card. It was a key not just to a door, but to the truth. I slid it into my wallet, my hands trembling, and decided I wasn't going to ask. I was going to follow. That evening, I drove to the hotel, a glass tower that gleamed under the city lights. The lobby was busy, conference badges hanging from lanyards, people chatting over overpriced cocktails. I moved quietly, blending into the crowd, the card burning in my pocket like a secret that demanded to be used. My heart pounded as I stepped into the elevator, pressing the button for the 12th floor. Each ding brought me closer to confirmation. Room 1217. I stopped in front of the door, my reflection staring back at me from the polished number plate. For a long moment I hesitated, keycard in hand, then I slid it into the slot. The light turned green. The door clicked open. Inside, the room smelled faintly of wine and expensive cologne. Laughter drifted from the balcony, low and intimate. I stepped in quietly, and there she was, my wife, leaning against the rail in a dress I hadn't seen before, her hand brushing the arm of a tall man in a tailored suit. He looked down at her with the easy confidence of someone who believed he owned the room. "To us," he said, raising his glass. "To the future." She laughed, soft and sweet, the laugh she used to save for me. "To my boss," she whispered. "The man who deserves me." I stood there in the shadows, unseen, my chest hollow, but my mind sharp. I didn't storm out onto the balcony. I didn't demand answers. Instead, I stepped back into the hallway, pulling the door gently closed behind me. Rage would have given them the story they wanted, a messy scene, a man unraveling. But silence? Silence was a scalpel. I drove home in the quiet of my car, the city blurring past my window. Every mile, I replayed the image of them together. Betrayal is heavy, but it can also be instructive. That night I opened a notebook and began to write. Not feelings, not questions, but facts, dates, times, expenses she couldn't explain. I started pulling bank statements, highlighting transfers. I checked shared accounts. Slowly, carefully, I traced every thread she thought invisible. The card had opened more than one door. It opened all of them. And as she slept soundly beside me, unaware of what I'd seen, I began to build the story she thought I'd never tell. A story that, when finished, would turn her secret world inside out. The morning after I slipped that key card into my wallet, the world outside looked ordinary. The sun rose, traffic snarled, neighbors walked their dogs. Inside, though, nothing was ordinary. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching her move around the house with casual ease. She hummed as she packed her lunch, texting someone on her phone, smiling faintly at whatever reply she received. She caught me staring and said, "What?" with a grin that dared me to challenge her. I only shook my head and smiled back, letting her believe everything was still intact. Silence had become my sharpest tool. If I accused her without proof, she would deny it, twist it, maybe even convince me I was imagining things. But the keycard had taught me something important. Her arrogance made her careless. She thought I would never look, Never follow. Never question. That arrogance would be her undoing. When she left for work, I pulled out my laptop. I started with the basics, our shared accounts. I'd handled the finances for years, so I knew what patterns to expect. Mortgage, utilities, groceries, the occasional splurge. But buried between the usual charges were anomalies. Hotel bars, luxury dinners, clothing boutiques far from her usual style. I printed them all, one by one, highlighting dates that matched her late nights at the office. Next, I checked our credit card points statement. Most people don't realize those reports reveal more than balances. They show exact vendors, exact times. There it was. Charges from the hotel restaurant the same night she claimed her team had been celebrating a milestone. 2 glasses of wine, 1 entree, 1 dessert. Yet the bill was for 2 entrees, 2 drinks, 2 desserts. A romantic dinner disguised as corporate bonding. I copied everything to a secure folder on a flash drive. Not at home, too risky. I rented a small safe deposit box at the bank where her name wasn't listed. Every few days I added more. Receipts, screenshots, even photos of her purse where she carelessly left slips from taxis or boutiques. Piece by piece, the picture sharpened into something undeniable. But evidence wasn't enough. I needed timing, precision. That's when I decided to track her movements, not through confrontation but through technology. A friend of mine, an IT consultant, once told me about family tracking apps that linked to shared devices. I didn't need to install anything. She had already synced her work phone to our shared cloud for convenience. I simply checked the log. Each evening, her location data appeared like breadcrumbs. And more often than not, those breadcrumbs led back to the same hotel. I sat in my office late into the night, staring at the map on my screen. A red dot blinked steadily on the 12th floor. Room 1217. She was consistent in her betrayal, almost routine about it. That, more than anything, cut the deepest. Still, I didn't lash out. I didn't storm the hotel again. Instead, I built my plan like a carpenter builds a table. Slow, deliberate, each joint cut to fit so tightly no lie could slip through. I wanted her to believe she was safe, that she had gotten away with it. I wanted her to feel bold enough to keep digging her own grave. The opportunity came sooner than expected. One Friday evening, she told me she was staying late to finalize a presentation. I nodded, kissed her on the cheek, and handed her the car keys. As soon as she left, I followed at a distance. I knew exactly where she was headed. Sure enough, she parked near the hotel, smoothed her hair in the mirror, and disappeared inside. I waited 10 minutes, then walked in myself, wearing a suit so I looked like another businessman attending a meeting. The concierge barely glanced at me. I rode the elevator up, heart steady this time. No longer the man who stumbled upon betrayal, but the man who had prepared for it. At the 12th floor, I didn't even approach her room. Instead, I set up a small device outside the door, a discreet audio recorder disguised as a charger cube. It would capture everything said within range. I left it humming, then walked away as if I'd never been there. That night, while she returned home late, smelling faintly of cologne that wasn't mine, I downloaded the file. Her laughter filled my headphones, mingled with the voice of her boss, deep and smug. Their words left little doubt. He whispered promises of promotions, of trips abroad, of a life where she wouldn't have to settle. She answered with giggles, with toasts to us. Every sentence became another nail in the coffin she was building for herself. Over the following weeks, I repeated the process. More recordings, more receipts, more digital trails. Each time I saved them carefully, labeling them with dates and times. I wasn't just collecting evidence, I was writing a story, one that would unfold with devastating precision when the moment came. And then, one evening, she gave me the opening I'd been waiting for. She came home glowing, eyes bright, voice too cheerful. "Guess what?" she said. "The company wants me to fly out for another conference next month. My boss thinks I'm ready for more responsibility." I smiled. "That's wonderful. You deserve it." She kissed me quickly and ran upstairs, already texting him, no doubt. What she didn't realize was that this trip would be her stage, and I would be the one directing the spotlight. By then, my lawyer already had the file. We met in a quiet cafe, where I slid the flash drive across the table. He raised an eyebrow as he scrolled through folders labeled neatly with dates. After 10 minutes, he looked up, impressed. You've documented everything. Bank fraud, infidelity, misuse of marital funds. If she tries anything, this won't just protect you. It will ruin her case before it even starts. That's the idea, I said. He nodded. So what do you want? Divorce? Settlement? Not yet, I replied. I want timing. I want her to think she's holding all the cards, and then, when she plays her hand, I want her to see the table flip under her. The lawyer leaned back, a slow smile crossing his face. You're colder than most clients. I respect that. From that day on, every move I made was deliberate. I transferred savings into accounts she couldn't access, secured the business paperwork under my name alone, and rerouted mail to my office. Quietly, steadily, I built a fortress around my life. She laughed, flirted, and lied, never realizing the walls were closing in. The night before her big conference, she packed a new dress into her suitcase, humming while she folded it. I watched from the doorway, my expression calm. She glanced at me, almost smug. Don't wait up, she teased. I smiled back. I won't. As she zipped her bag, she had no idea that the next morning, when she boarded that plane with her boss, the real trip wouldn't be hers. It would be mine. Straight into the heart of her carefully spun world, carrying every piece of proof she thought I'd never find. And when I was finished, when the curtain finally rose, she would realize the keycard hadn't opened a hotel room. It had opened the end of everything she thought she controlled. The day of her so-called conference began with sunshine, the kind of morning that could fool anyone into believing the world was calm. She bustled around the house, suitcase in hand, phone pressed to her ear. Yes, I'll be there early, she said, her voice dripping with rehearsed excitement. She caught me watching her and added, Don't work too hard while I'm gone. I smiled, steady and unreadable. She left with a kiss that felt more like punctuation than affection. I waited until her car disappeared down the street, then gathered my bag, lighter than hers, but far heavier in purpose. Inside was everything. The flash drive, the recordings, the bank statements, the photos of receipts she had left lying around. Proof enough to bury the illusion she had built. The hotel lobby was bustling when I arrived later that afternoon. Attendees in sharp suits milled about, name tags swinging as they hurried between sessions. I moved through them like a ghost. Unnoticed, calm. I already knew where to go, the 12th floor, room 1217, the stage where this entire farce had begun. But I didn't knock. I didn't slide the card into the door. That kind of confrontation would have given her a chance to spin lies, to cry, to manipulate. Instead, I walked into the adjoining conference hall where her company's leadership team had gathered for cocktails before dinner. My lawyer, already seated in a corner, gave me a slight nod. He had a manila envelope resting casually on the table. Ready? He asked. More than ready, I replied. When her boss entered the room, flanked by colleagues, he drew immediate attention. He carried himself like a man who thought the room belonged to him. My wife followed close behind, laughing at something he whispered. She looked radiant, confident, certain that her future was shining brighter than ever. The speeches began. Praise for leadership, recognition for the team. Congratulations for upcoming promotions. Glasses clinked. Applause rippled. Then came the moment my lawyer had orchestrated. He rose smoothly, introduced himself as my legal representative, and requested a few words. People turned, puzzled but polite. He opened the envelope and placed a stack of papers on the podium. Before these celebrations continue, he said evenly, there are matters that must be addressed. Matters concerning financial misconduct and inappropriate workplace behavior. The room fell silent. My wife's smile vanished. Her boss shifted uncomfortably. My lawyer began to read, not accusations, but her own words. Verbatim lines from her emails to the divorce attorney. I want to take his business, house, and retirement before he discovers the affairs. The gasps that followed were sharp, cutting. Eyes darted toward her boss, toward me standing in the corner with folded arms. She stammered, "This is private, this is out of context." But her voice shook, and the silence that followed was merciless. Her colleagues stared, some with pity, others with disgust. Her boss's face turned crimson. He excused himself abruptly, muttering about misunderstandings, but the damage was done. The evening collapsed around her. No applause, no toasts, just whispers, the kind that spread like wildfire in professional circles. Within hours, the story would reach the company's higher management, and her carefully plotted future would unravel faster than she could scramble to repair it. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't raise my voice. I simply walked out of the hall, leaving her to face the ruins she had built with her own hands. My lawyer followed, the empty envelope tucked neatly under his arm. "It's over," he said quietly. "You've won." But the real victory came days later, when the official fallout began. She returned home shaken, trying to act as if nothing had happened, but the phone calls told the truth. HR demanded meetings. Her boss avoided her entirely. Promotions disappeared. By the end of the week, she was placed on leave pending investigation. The woman who once laughed over champagne in hotel rooms now sat at our dining table in silence, staring at bills she could no longer pay with company perks. That was when she tried her last desperate move. She reached for our joint savings, thinking she could at least secure herself financially. But every attempt failed. Transfers blocked. Withdrawals flagged. Her card declined at the grocery store, her voice rising in panic as the cashier repeated, "Do you have another form of payment?" I watched it unfold with a calm she couldn't touch. She confronted me finally, eyes blazing with desperation. "What did you do?" she demanded. "I protected myself," I answered simply. Her face crumpled, not from guilt, but from the realization that she had lost. Not just me, not just the marriage, but the illusion of power she thought she held. She packed a bag one night and left without a word. The slam of the door was the last sound of her reign. In the months that followed, her world collapsed piece by piece. Friends distanced themselves. Her boss resigned under scrutiny, his reputation scorched by association. She drifted from job to job, never able to shake the whispers. And me? I thrived. The workshop grew, clients admired my steadiness, and I rebuilt a life free of deceit. Sometimes, late at night, I take out the hotel keycard, the one that started it all. I keep it in a drawer, not as a wound, but as a reminder. Betrayal doesn't have to be met with rage. Sometimes the sharpest revenge is patience, silence, proof, and timing so perfect that the truth becomes the executioner. The card that once opened a door to betrayal now sits locked away, powerless. And I walk forward, steady, knowing I never needed to shout. All I needed was to let her secrets unlock themselves. Months after her downfall, the hotel keycard still sat in my drawer, collecting dust like a relic from a war I'd already won. Life had moved forward, my business flourished, new contracts rolled in, and my name was whispered in boardrooms for my resilience, not scandal. Yet hers? Her name carried only weight in rumors, stories of betrayal that followed her from office to office. One evening, I received a message from an unknown number. It was her. She wrote, "Please, can we meet? I need to explain. I've lost everything." For a moment, I stared at the screen, remembering her laughter on that balcony, the champagne raised to her boss. I didn't reply. A week later, she showed up outside my workshop. She looked smaller, clothes wrinkled, eyes hollow. "I just want to talk," she said, her voice breaking. "I never thought it would all fall apart. He promised me everything, and left me with nothing." I set down my tools, wiped the sawdust from my hands, and looked at her. For the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no pity, just a vast distance. "You didn't just betray me," I said evenly. "You betrayed yourself, and you'll keep paying for it until you learn the truth has longer legs than lies." She cried, begging for forgiveness, for a second chance, not at love, but at respect. I didn't answer. I walked back inside and closed the door, leaving her sobbing in the twilight. That was the final revenge. Not dramatic words or courtroom victories, but silence. She had written her own ending the moment she chose deceit over loyalty. I no longer needed to fight. I had peace. And as I worked late into the night, the keycard still in my drawer, I realized it wasn't a symbol of betrayal anymore. It was a reminder of the day I stopped being a victim and became the author of my own story.